All right, so we are joined here by Zach. How would you say the name of the game exactly?
Hello, yes. It's Mazaic. It's like a portmanteau of maze and mosaic because I thought that would be
Okay,
a fun
okay,
name. So, yeah.
got it. All right, so I was saying it wrong. Um, but yeah, thank you for letting me know, and welcome back to the stream. How have you been doing?
Yes. Hello. No, I've been doing pretty well. I've been um, enjoying getting to see a bunch of really cool games coming out of this jam. So many games with dice. Not too surprising, but I was pleased to have one that wasn't that dice centric for some change of pace.
Okay, so I press down and I get key. Oh, hang on. How does that work? Oh, I'm locking that actual level. Sorry, yeah.
Yes.
I asked how does that work, and you don't have to answer. I'm okay with musing aloud to myself. I understand
Okay.
now that I'm locking this level in, so that when I randomize it, um, okay, so I can like hop over here, lock this in. So I guess I will have to find out whether or not it is in fact a good idea to be locking these levels in.
Yes. Do you know what your goal is?
Um, at this point, I don't. I know I have a slot machine. I see I can like unlock stuff. Um, I see two maps on either side of the screen. I'm in this one. If I had to guess, it would be making everything into the number three.
Yes.
From okay,
Yeah, that's at the very beginning, and I've gotten much feedback about how it's a little bit confusing at the start. At the very beginning, it shows you a little animation that shows the map that's currently on the left, the one with all the threes. That's the goal. So your goal is to take the map you're currently in and make it uh, all rooms with three on them.
okay. Um, yeah, let's see. And then I still have to find the room that has the slot machine in it.
Yes.
And are these levels all like randomly generated?
Yes, they are all procedurally generated, which took longer than I was expecting it to take for many reasons, but it was a lot of fun to do, and I'm very pleased with pretty much how the random generation turned out. But it was a little bit more work than I did anticipate at first.
Yeah, I guess like how do you guarantee that it's possible to yeah, like all these tiles like that yeah, I guess I can just sort of like broadly ask the question, how do you guarantee that it's possible to navigate between the rooms?
Um, it's a great question. So the main thing that I did was to kind of I didn't think I would be able to really solve that problem from an engineering standpoint, which is like
Mm-hmm.
tagging the rooms that have hot viable rooms next to them, and I thought that would require a lot more thought and overhead than I thought was possible in 48 hours. So I
Mm-hmm.
was like, so I thought I could solve the problem at least most of the time, enough of the time where I would be kind of okay with it for 48 hours, was through a bunch of very clever level design rules. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so making it so that things like there's never openings in one room that are completely shut off by another room, for example. So like
Mm-hmm.
you don't actually, you have rooms that if it says you can move from one to the other, you always can. Um, so like sort of valuing and those actual transitions between rooms. That being said, uh, in order to make each individual room more interesting and more unique, they did have to have some weird sort of layouts that weren't just, oh, you just go to the key very easily. So I had to make some little wrinkles to that. So there are some ways to potentially I think get soft locked if you with like specific combinations of rooms in very specific patterns. But I didn't that wasn't. I didn't think that was worth it enough to try to solve those very very fringe edge cases.
So it is a partially not 100% like. There's not a guarantee that it's going to be like all locked in and 100% possible, but it is largely possible.
Yes, I'm pretty. I have not really seen one yet that is completely impossible. And even then, there's I think there are ways that you can work around it. But yeah, mainly it was mainly a factor of using careful level design to make sure that like there are specific spots like the two tiles onto the like any sort of any room that has called a passageway going downwards. There's always those two. There's always three gaps in the floor in the right in the center and then off to the left or the right that are always open, so that there's never like you go down, but then there's a ceiling on the room below that'll actually block you from moving there. So sort of follow like creating and sort of following those rules very specifically when I was making each one of these different layouts for each type of room.
Yeah, so we've got this kind of like I don't know, grenade shape. I don't know. This is kind of like an ink blot test. Like you look at this abstract shape, what do you see? For me, I see like I don't know, grenade.
It's like like a fire hydrant or something. I don't know.
That or like a thumb making like a thumb bent real backwards.
Yeah, I first started off with I think it's the layout of the first dungeon from Zelda 1. Like that was the test layout that I used.
Yeah, is that what I'm seeing in the screenshots here?
No, I think that was the randomized one. But for like the longest time, I had just the layout of the first Zelda 1 dungeon because I was like, that's a dungeon with rooms and stuff. And then I finally had to be like, all right, I have to make the thing that actually places the rooms in the different to randomize the actual rooms. And then that ended up taking a little bit longer. But for the longest time, it was just a single static sort of dungeon.
Oh, I didn't realize that the like entire layout of the thing actually changed. I thought it was just the order, the levels within that. That's even more wild.
Yes, that was. I was like, oh, I'll just do that. That should be easy. And then I had to figure out how exactly to create an algorithm that would make a layout like this that would be marginally interesting to traverse and would be possible to traverse. So there aren't just rooms disconnected from everything else, and there aren't just like all the slot machines bundled up together and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah, and when you approach the edge of a screen, like levels actually share tiles, don't they? Like it appears like the levels seem to like share some of the side tiles.
They're pretty contained. There's I think in this view sometimes there's some weird like what's it called?
So if I'm standing here, for instance, on this screen, and I'll leave it for a second so that the lag has a chance to get catch up. But basically, as I make this jump from these 3 blocks onto this 1 block, then I'm still standing on that 1 block as the screen pans over.
Yes, I think that's an artifact of the screen sizing being a little bit weird sometimes in WebGL, where like if you what's it called? If you zoom in and out on the web page, it'll like very slightly shift the size of the whole screen.
Oh, I see.
And I still am not sure how to actually fix that. It's not too like game breaking or anything.
It actually helps to like be able to see where the edges of the screen are, though.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. But this current view, the one where like the tiles neatly line up with the left and right sides of the screen. I guess that was the intended design, but having it so that you can see a little bit farther beyond is pretty reasonable too. It's actually pretty nice.
Yeah.
So
Oh, dang. And this is a reprise of the character from one of your previous Jam games, right?
that is absolutely correct. Yes, this I just I was when I was coming up with this idea. Yeah, joint tip. It's the same character from Joint Temporal Custody.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I just straight up took the whole character and like subplanted him into this game because I was like, I don't think I'm gonna have time to remake a whole new 2D character controller and make procedural levels and all this stuff. So I was like, let's just let's just reuse what worked.
Yep. Like I am all about that. You'll never get flack from me for reusing code or character controllers or art or whatever in the context of a jam.
Yeah, and like I'm still very pleased with like how sort of fluid the controller feels. So I felt like it would be a pretty nice fit for a game like this where you're just mainly just moving around a lot. So I thought it would be a pretty nice fit, and people seem to be really enjoying it, which is great because this has like all the nice like input buffer and a little bit coyote time, all that nice stuff that feels a little bit better to control.
Yeah, you don't need to rebuild from scratch each time.
Yeah, if I can avoid it, yeah, that's nice.
All right. So, can you talk a little bit about the inspiration behind this idea?
Yes, I can. So, I heard about so obviously the theme was released, and I spent well, first I had to finish up work, but after like the whole time I was kind of like just toying with some ideas of like, oh, I could do this, I could do this, and as soon as I heard about the theme, I knew I did not want to make a game about rolling dice in like a grid because I knew that would happen a lot, and I was totally right. There are a million of those, and just for the sake of having something that stands out a little bit, I wanted to deliberately not do that. And there are a few other things where I was like, I think that's going to be a bit too common of a thing. So I tried to think a little bit more outside the box, and take the theme a little less literally, because I think that makes it a little bit more interesting. So I was thinking of, I like the idea of, with randomness, of sort of re-rolling. So like you get random stuff and you're like, okay, I want to like get some new random stuff, but you choose when to re-roll things. So then it was a matter of trying to figure out like in what context is re-rolling interesting. And I kind of also wanted to make something that had like a map that you could traverse, because I think having like larger areas that you can move around in that are connected is an interesting space that I haven't really gotten to explore, especially in most of the jam games. So the past 2 years have been like all little puzzle games that are just small bite-sized levels. So I wanted to make something a little bit more a little bigger and more interconnected. So then it was a matter of like, oh, what if the whole dungeon has a bunch of rooms, and then you can re-roll the rooms to make it look like a certain, to achieve a certain goal. In this case, it was make them all look the same, make them all the same tile set. And then I was like, because that could be pretty interesting. So then it was a matter of like, okay, well, then how do you control this randomness? How is it not just you just sit at the slot machine and keep pressing the button until you get lucky? And then the idea came, weirdly enough, from a color palette generating website called Colors. It's like COLOOR, where the way that website works is that it'll give you like 5 random colors. And then you pick the ones that you like and you lock them, and then you hit the random generator and it'll pick random colors.
I've definitely seen this before.
Yeah. So like the idea of like locking down rooms and then re-rolling came from that. Which seems really like, yeah, the main idea for the game came from a color palette website. But it really kind of did, because I've used this a couple times, and it's just kind of fun to be like, yeah, I like that color. You lock it down, and then you just sort of keep rolling the dice, but you have that sort of ability to always save something that you do like. So That was where the idea of sort of like locking rooms down, and and as soon as I realized like, oh, you could lock down a room purely, even if it's not the right room when you need, just because it's easier to traverse. Like once I realized that possibility, I was like, okay, this might be really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when I was like, all right, and I couldn't really think of any other better ideas, frankly. I felt like this theme was a little bit more difficult, at least for me, than the past few years. So when I had this sort of idea, I was like, all right, let's just go for it. And sort of that was the sort of design initially when I started out, and it, you know, stayed relatively close to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think like you pushed it just far enough. Like you went past the sort of like first idea and you got to a really interesting space. Like I think it's fantastic that you were able to use this website, like because yeah, it is like almost toy-like in the way that you can lock colors. And
Yeah,
with God as my witness, I swear I didn't realize that this one was called Patriarch before I clicked it.
yeah. The weird names are a fun thing.
But yeah, so I think that yeah, it presents a nice little puzzle that you can like even go back and re-experience and get a like subtly different challenge when you play through a second time. Because I also noticed that, as you said, you can't just keep going to the same um, what are they called? Slot machines. My God, that word was not coming to my brain. You have to actually like traverse between at least two, so it
Yes.
incentivizes you to kind of like lock in a couple near one, then make your way up. Usually up. I don't know. I guess you could start at the top and work your way down, but I don't know. Do you usually start near the bottom?
You start at a completely random position in the map. Um, you can start out pretty much anywhere. There's a lot of I have no idea how many different map configurations there are. There's probably like thousands, if not like a million or something. There's a lot. But yeah, you can appear pretty much anywhere on the map as a starting spot. So there's always a different map to. Yes, it is kind of downwell like, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. I was getting the like similar vibes from that Meta Hangover. I think anytime you see a game, I mean, as I've done with Worlds Within Worlds, right? Like this is I'm very much a fan of like a minimal palette expressed well, get some good contrasting colors, and it's all the more important that when you start messing around with those randomized palettes, that you also take the time to make sure that these randomized palettes are colorblind friendly, which was something
Yes.
that took a very long time when I was doing this.
Yeah, that like I don't know. A lot of people have. I've gotten more like praise than I was expecting. People really like the visuals, which is great for the game. I was not expecting that because it was basically just, well, it's the simplest thing for me to do is to only have two colors, because if your game plays well and like with two colors, like you're golden, like you can do anything. Like there's no possibility of any colorblind problems
Mm-hmm.
if it works in monochrome. And the only other color is the red that I couldn't figure out how to indicate what tile you're currently on. And I did use Color Oracle, which is great. And like even in grayscale, that red shows up.
Yeah,
So it contrasts enough off of the white and everything else that you can tell. But yeah, it was mainly just like, oh, one like pixel art that's only one color is way easier than pixel art with multiple colors. At least for me, I'm pretty practiced at it at this point, and I think it's a really fun constraint to sort of work around.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I I couldn't help but notice when I was looking at these tiles. I'm like, oh, we got these sort of like Swiss cheese tiles. These look a little reminiscent of one of the palettes that I made for Worlds Within Worlds. I was like back in my brain. I was like, oh, I wonder, was that at all an inspiration or? Oh, come on, this jump. What is this jump? Eh. Is this
Oh yeah,
possible?
you can make it. It's a little rough. The So yeah, a lot of people have been calling it like a Swiss cheese palette. That was not my
Yeah.
intent. My original intent was like kind of like moon craters,
Yeah, yeah.
but it definitely looks like Swiss cheese. So I can't blame anyone for thinking that because it sure does. Um, but when I was making it, I was like, it looks like the moon. That's cool.
Cute DuckTales moon theme.
Yes, exactly. I just wanted a nice little like because I wanted the because there are only three different flavors of room layouts.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like the basic like noisy blocks. There's these like spiraling looking ones, and then there's like the moon cheese ones.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really I spent more time than I probably should have just iterating through a bunch of different block designs, and like so many of them didn't feel right. And I literally just took a noise pattern on there's 16 by 16 boxes. I just took a random noise pattern and then just upped the contrast until I got the noisy block pattern that you see now. Like I didn't there's no artistry to that. I just put a noise thing and upped the contrast until it was all black or white and then said call it a day because it looked good.
Yeah, that works. That totally works.
Because at that point I was like I can't get anything that looks good, and then I was like let's just try this, and it actually kind of really liked the result, and I was like all right, let's just go with it. This will work.
I've made a terrible mistake. The first 2 times I played this game, I was trying to get a 3 on every single surface. I'm like, why didn't I win? Oh, I was supposed to get a 1 on every single surface.
Yeah, so that's actually one of the things that, looking at it now especially, and I think I had this idea in the jam, but I couldn't figure out how to communicate it. So I decided to change the idea a little bit. I think it would be really cool, and I'd looking to potentially change this in like an updated version. Is I decided to give people a goal of what to make in order to make it a little clearer what they're supposed to do. But I think it would be way more interesting if you just have to make the entire map any of one color. It's sort of like getting a run of cards in like a card game or something, like a rummy style game, where you get to sort of have that sort of kind of like risk reward of like, okay, do I switch to trying to go for a different goal as based on what the randomness gives you? I think that'd be even more interesting. Because you could be like, oh, I'm going to try to make everything 3s. And then you get a really good random roll that changes a bunch of them to 2s. And then you have to make that decision of like, okay, do I switch tracks and like try to go for a different goal then? I think that'd be really interesting. But as far as like communicating that, I thought that would be even harder. And I've already had a number of like communication issues as far as like how to actually indicate what the player's supposed to be doing most of the time. So that's sort of the biggest stuff that I've been trying to.
Yeah, I do admire your commitment to use as few words as possible and to just like see how much of it can be communicated by the like visual language of like lock, key, this, that. Like, you know, the funny thing is, you did your best to not prompt me and tell me what to do, but when you said, do you understand what you're supposed to do? That made me like stop and evaluate. And like, I would have done that. Like if this wasn't a game, if this wasn't an interview, I would have had that phase of like stopping to evaluate and like look through stuff. If I'd have done that before we started the interview, then I would have probably been able to figure it out. But it was just funny on that meta level of like realizing, oh yeah, that make same. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I tried to make all of this like as because I knew originally that like because as I was thinking about the idea originally, I realized that it is kind of complicated. It's not immediately intuitive what's exactly going on. It takes some like messing around a little bit to piece together things. So I tried to make as much of it as like telegraphed as possible. So I was like, I needed a thing to lock rooms. What locks things? Keys lock things. So it's a key. That's why. I needed something that would randomize rooms. What randomizes things? Well, dice do, but dice take animations and things. Slot machines don't take animations. There's just the arm is up and the arm is down. That's all we need. And so that's easier. So all the little interactable things were all sort of built on, sort of form follows function, just to make it as intuitive as I could make it without, using words. Because I've seen so many at this point, like
so many games that use words.
Yeah, so many games use words. So many games use too many words, and like people don't read. People don't like reading.
No, it's very true. Like I'm saying it very tongue in cheek, but it is legitimately like if you can make your game communicate like through the language of design, that transcends traditional language barriers.
Yeah, pretty well. Though I did realize after getting a lot of feedback, the biggest piece of feedback that I've gotten is that I don't know what I'm doing to start off, which is completely fair. That's completely fair. So after receiving all of that, I did add that hey, if you're stuck, these are some things that could help you. Just because I know they're a lot of people have figured it out, which is awesome, but a lot of people have had trouble with that, and that's completely understandable. So I'd be definitely looking to minimize that because it's definitely even more sort of difficult to understand, as more difficult than I was expecting, which is obviously not the best thing. But the fact that people still hey, it was fun after I figured out what was going on, I'm like, okay, then that's better than I didn't know what I was doing and then I figured it out and it still wasn't fun. That's not great.
Yeah. So all that said, do you have any plans that you'd like to make some small tweaks for a post-gen version?
Yeah, I don't know. I've originally, when I first submitted it, I was I kind of don't want to change anything because I'm still working on the updated version of my game from last year's Game Jam. That's still going. It's almost done. So I'm kind of, I almost don't want to open Pandora's box and have that whole thing, but I feel like it's a necessity, at least in some small degree, to fix sort of the big glaring issues that I've had pointed out many times in a lot of the feedback. So it was mainly seeing the types of feedback that I was getting that really convinced me that it doesn't have to be a huge overhaul of everything, but there does need to be a how to play and a little in-game sort of thing that shows you and gives more of a clue before you just dive straight in and don't know what the heck's going on.
So what specifically would you like to address?
Let's see. I'm thinking the big thing with a bullet is having an option from the title screen that's a how to play that has a little tiny mini dungeon that's fixed that shows hey, this is that it's a controlled environment where I can illustrate hey, you locked this room, so when you hit the slot machine, this one changed and this one didn't, and then being able to sort of show that again in a controlled environment, because there's already enough noise and randomness that makes figuring out what's going on a little bit harder to figure out. So having a sort of little tutorial controlled environment that makes it easier to see what's going on, that's definitely the biggest thing, I think. Beyond that, fixing the bug that you can soft lock the game, that's definitely worth doing, I think. And yeah, also I'm still figuring out how to actually go about doing this, but I would have liked to add another different layout or two. This current one with the spiral pattern blocks, I got that in 2 hours before, because I was just rushing through trying to get it. I was I need more than two two patterns. Like the game doesn't work if there's only two. It's not nearly as interesting. And so I was just rushing to like, okay, how does this pattern look different? And I was just sort of throwing things together, and I think it came out reasonably. But having like I think a fourth one would add a little bit more variety, and things to it. And then looking at maybe making it so that you don't have a goal of like make this map. You can make any map that has like all of them the same.
They all match. It's
just match all of them to be the same. I think that would open it up and make it even more interesting.
Having fallen victim to accidentally not doing that, or to accidentally not following the template, I think that I would agree, and it would simplify. You're not having to compare anything at that point because you're just trying to make them all the same.
Yes, because that one of the other problems that some people have pointed out is like the map can kind of, because it's in the top left and top right corner, it can kind of like obscure some blocks.
That
make it a little bit more difficult to move around than it probably should be. And that was just purely a symptom of me not planning as well, because I had like figured out the screen size and everything, and then I remembered, oh wait, I need to have two mini maps on this game. I guess they just kind of have to be on top of things. But if I only had one map, then I could do the nice sort of thing where if you get close to that map, if you get close to the top right side, then it just moves over to the top left. So it like will clear out, so it doesn't cover up anything that it doesn't have to. Little things like that.
How much do you care about this game adhering to an actual pixel grid?
I mean, it's supposed to be. I noticed that the map sometimes doesn't, and I don't know why, because none of this is like this is in Unity, but none of this is using UI. This is all using like the same pixel per inch, what's it called? Images. So like all this stuff really should be pixel perfect. So I don't know what's going on.
What is it made in? Oh, wait. You said Unity, but...
Yeah, this is in Unity.
Okay. Because if your goal is to make it pixel perfect, then, go for it. But I was just going to suggest, like, one little way that you could sort of visually clue people into make it the same would be if you have the numbers on everything in the UI. And everything that is a 1 pulses. And then everything that's a 2 pulses. And then everything that's a 3 pulses, and then it cycles back and repeats in that, like, everything that is matched will pulse, and that gives you this little clue that, like, well, these things are related, and if I make more things pulse at the same time, maybe that is good.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. I do like that.
But obviously it only works, like, if you have such a minimal resolution on the minimap, then you can't pulse it without sort of cheating, and I don't know, maybe you could. Like, you technically have exactly one pixel of leeway, but you don't get a nice, like, animation on it if you do it that way. So. Yeah,
I don't know. That's definitely that's worth thinking about for sure.
You technically do. Like, you technically have just enough resolution to make it work, because even if you sort of like cut it off around the boundary, if you have it like become larger by 1 pixel, and then contract by 1 pixel, like you have just enough to make it work if you wanted to pursue that. But I don't know, I feel like there are other ways you could make them. And then as as Lurk Not a Lie is saying, you have other ways you can cheat with the anti-aliasing technique, whatever that anti-aliasing style is called. Imply subpixels. Oh, okay, yeah, with subpixel moments with shades. Yeah. But I think that, again, your other sort of goal is to have to only have the 2 tones or shades. So don't worry, my brain is fried as well by the fact that I read your name as Dirk.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm like too hung up on like explicitly only two colors, because I do have because I did like make the cop out. I can't figure out how to convey even more information in this mini map, because there's already a lot of information that I had to convey, or I wanted to convey in it, like whether the room is locked or not, whether what type of room it is, where is it on the map, and then if the player is in there or not. Like, that's a lot of information, and I couldn't even, like, the only reason that they have dice patterns at all is because there was no better way to show in that, because they're like 5x5 little boxes. There's no better way to show it other than the dice pattern. So I purely stumbled into that. It's not even that I wanted it to look like the dice representations of numbers. There was just no other way I could do it.
Yeah, I mean, it works. Like, you're gonna, I mean, oh my God, thank goodness, for the first time in so long, you're actually not being rated on theme anymore, and I super appreciate that. But you get bonus points and no one complaining in the comments that you're not adhering to the theme by having the little dice pictures.
I was like, there's randomness. There are dice behind the hood being rolled. It's all good.
Yeah, it's all good. All right. Well, if anybody has any questions, I think now would be the time to get those in. And yeah, I guess, do you have any, like, you mentioned side by size, which is what you've been working on for the past year, but anything else that you'd like people to take a look at?
Great question. I don't know. I just have other games. Most of them are not most. A number of them are other GMTK Game Jam games that, not to brag too much, but have been rated pretty highly and were enjoyed by many. So, and people still go and play them, and hopefully enjoy them. So I'm still pretty pleased with how the past few submissions have gone for GMTK, and so I feel like this year was a little bit weaker than in the past, but I'm still pleased with how it's gone, and I think there's definitely some room for improvement for sure. So stay tuned for that. It'll definitely be faster than the updated version of Side by Size, because oh my gosh. But yeah, that updated Side by Size is coming eventually.
All right,
despite all of my best efforts to determine when that will be.
All right, well, I will just generally share your itch.io page there as well, and people can check out your other entries into past jams and yeah, just in general. I've definitely enjoyed Joint Temporal Custody. Oh my goodness, and Side by Size a whole lot, and yeah, just in general. Thank you so much for coming on the channel and sharing your project.
Well, thank you very much for having this wonderful platform for people to talk and show off work and get feedback and all this great stuff. It's just a really, really great, space to improve and grow as developers and stuff. It's really cool. So thank you for doing all this for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully someday it'll actually be self-sustaining and it isn't just me spending my vacation time doing this.
Yeah, sustainability is important. Sure, it is important.
But anyway, yeah, I guess we'll call it for that. Call it for now. And thank you so much for coming on. And I look forward, as always, to seeing what you come up with in the future.
All right. Thanks so much. Have a good one.
Bye for now.